Hello, this is Dr. Hisham Said. Welcome to this last part of the lesson on cost management. The first four parts, we learn about cost management, and the big part of it is cost estimation. We learn about adjusting cost estimates for location and time. We learn about rough order of magnitude estimates, and we learn about assembly-based estimates. So the last thing we're going to discuss here is work-based cost estimates. And we'll learn about when we apply this type of estimate and the use of RSMeans as our main textbook here or reference for cost data for work-based estimates. So now you went through the planning phase and feasibility phase. You did the rough order of magnitude. More data you have, then you will tend to use assemblies to come up with your estimates, so assembly-based estimates. And the more and more you go into detail of the design and detailing the drawings and specs, you will have more information that you actually capitalize on and make a more realistic cost estimate here. So now we are beyond depending on assemblies, and you can have actually detailed information from design that you can visualize and think about how the work will be done. So this is why we call it work-based design. And remember from assemblies, when we covered them in the last video, we said that they include or lump together, group together multiple work items. So now every one of these work items can actually be estimated in detail using the work-based cost estimate approach. And work-based cost estimate can be used and mainly used by the contractors to submit bids. And they do that because the format that they use for cost estimating is following master format, which is depending on classifying the project scope by the material and the installation methods. So it's more friendly on managing the project in terms of who will do the work and how. So you're thinking about bidding, what subcontractors will be involved. So, and you don't perform the cost estimate, all of it by yourself. You get subcontractor quotes into your bid. So it's more friendly to do detailed cost estimate for the sake of construction following a work-based estimating approach. Also, engineers use work-based cost estimating to validate the contractor cost estimate. And in some cases, like heavy civil projects, you don't have assemblies. You have fewer scope work scope items, and you, as engineer, you can actually do kind of almost a similar level of detail that a contractor uses to develop a cost estimate. So what we'll use here is the RSMeans building cost. And you can see here to the right, just another snapshot. We've seen it in another video before, that 49 divisions of master format, which is used in RSMeans for the construction building cost data book, which is the basis for getting the cost rates for the work-based cost estimate we'll see. RSMeans, it's a book, and it have been traditionally like that until they have now online system where we can actually create an account for free, I guess, for limited time. But it is pretty expensive actually, but it's useful, especially for engineers. But as a contractor, you should have your own in-house cost control tool to track your costs, so you don't need it. But the book for unit costs and building cost data is a little thicker. Not little, actually, it's a lot thicker than the square foot cost book. So I actually have here the books with me. So this is the square foot cost. So that's the thing I covered in the previous parts of this lesson. So it had we used it for the square foot cost and also the assemblies. You can see how thick it is. And then the uh, building uh, cost data book. That one is the one that's used for detailed estimates. You can see how thick it is. If I put the two books together, this is the green one is the square foot, and the red one is the detailed cost estimate. So you have bigger classification system to cover the scope because you have little pieces of work type and material types to track the cost data for. So this page here, if we're gonna explain it, I will explain it in two parts. So the left part of the table here is giving you the work items, work line items. So line items are here, and their cost data. So if I look at the line items, they are organized in a hierarchy way, kind of like a tree branching. So the first, you can see here, the first level, I'm dealing with division 3. So it's concrete. 0330, it's cast in place concrete. 0330 53 is miscellaneous concrete, cast in place concrete. And then digging into concrete in place, and you go in details. But this level, the bold one, is the standard master format classification code. Anything beyond that is RSmeans kind of their own way of detailing the work items more and more. And the detail here comes because every line of these is representing a different material being used, or a different way of putting it together, or different crew. So more and more different, many options can be done or utilized for the same cost estimate line item. And it's up to the estimator here to make sure that pick the right line, because every one of this line can be applicable, but you pick the best line that matches your project. But the way to read these lines here is you read it from the bottom up. So you read it in an upward way. So you actually read it backward, kind of. So if I look at 03, 30, 53, 40, 35, 50. So which one is this? 35, 50, this one. So I read it backward. It's actually a 4 by 4 feet by 6 inch thick equipment pad of this type of strength of concrete. I'm not dealing with this, I'm dealing with this dimension of the pad. And I go all the way here. It's not the beams, it's equipment pad all the way to here. And that includes forms for uses, because if I use it more, it will be cheaper to recycle the wood. And then grade 60 rebar concrete. This is Portland cement type 1. Placement and finishing unless otherwise indicated. So sometimes in the details below, you can actually exclude things were not excluded before, or include things were not included before. So this is a description here. You read it backward. So one thing I mentioned before is you make sure that the line item you pick from RSmeans matches with the conditions of your project. All right. Next here is just a little detail. These boxes here refer to different sections later in the book that give you some information about the work be done, like information about the material standards and quantities, conversion rate between different quantities of the material. So that's just kind of referring to other sections relevant to this section of the work. Now we covered the left part of the table, which is the line items description. The right part of the page is the cost rates as provided, which is the most important. This is what we're looking for. So if you look at it, I'm just showing half of it. Remember, there's a half here hidden. So the first thing you will see is the crews. What type of crew is being used? Remember, that's a work-based cost estimate. It's the most detailed type of estimate you can do. And you have to think now how the work will be done and by what type of crew. So these are the codes for different crews, where you will find in the back of the book a lot of pages kind of giving you the composition of the crew. So this is a concrete placement, and it's using this crew that's made up of a foreman, 2 carpenters, a roadman for placement, the reinforcement, and 1 laborer and 1 cement finisher. Every one of these is a respectful trade person who is proud of his or her trade. And then you have here a vibrator, just one minor equipment or tool. And then you have here some bare costs and other costs here in different formats. Um, so the daily rate of this crew, if you're going to use this crew, is 30 equipment pads. So this is the same line item we are discussing before. So they place 30 equipment pads. If you use this crew, you will have this output daily. Now, the labor hours is another way of presenting the information. So labor hours is basically dividing the number of hours available total for the laborers or workers in this crew. So I have here 6 human, you can think of it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 2 carpenters here, pay attention to that. So I have 6 people, each one is working normally 8 hours a day, and you divide by 30 pads per day. So every pad will require 1.6 hours of my crew workers. So kind of putting it in this way, summarizing the unit hours. So unit hours is dependent on the crew and the hourly production of the crew, or daily production of the crew. And you have to pay attention to the units you are using here, because every line item can have a different unit that's used to track the costs. For here, most of the concrete work is cubic yards. Some cases here, this one here is each by unit. So you need to pay attention to what unit is being used in this line item. Bare costs here, so they're breaking down now the cost, because now it's a detailed cost. I can actually go into that level of detail. So material, labor, equipment. These are the 3 main components of the cost, and you can add up these two, all 3 components here. So the total is equal to MLE cost components. And this total is bare cost, meaning that you're not including any overhead or profit on top of these. So if you want to include these, then you will use this column. So when to use this column and when to use the loss column, it depends if you are self-performing the work or you are actually subbing it. So if you are self-performing the work, you will include the cost of this item as just a bare cost, and then at the end you will add your own overhead and profit. But if you are subbing it out, so this sub will send you the code of this work not as a cost, but they will add their own overhead and profit. So in this case, you will include the overhead and profit, and you'll use numbers from here, not from here. Does this mean that now you will double overhead and profit a sub work? Yes. So a sub work, let's say I'm subbing painting. So the sub painting contractor will have their own overhead and profit, and then I will put my own overhead and profit as a GC because I'm managing them and the work is on my responsibility and my liability. So this is the way that industry works. You might think it's double dipping or double charging, but you're managing the work and it's actually done by someone else, so they have to also take the share of the pie of the profit. So this is an example, a complete estimate sheet. So this is an estimate sheet. It's actually an Excel sheet, and I'll post it in my class. It's provided by RS Means as an example. So you see here, this is the way to organize it. This is the line item, the code. You have to write a description so anyone reviewing your estimate will be able to understand what items are there. Quantity, units, you detail your cost. You have here, this is the bare cost. If you are subbing it out, then you have to list here the sub code that you got, if you're getting code, or if you didn't get code, you can actually use the one with the overhead and profit from RS Means. And then you add up all that. So you see here you have division 3, you have division 8 and division 13 in this project. Once you add them up, if they are all bare costs or they are sub packages, then you will add here your overhead and profit. You have overhead and profit, you have sales tax, you have contingency, you can add bonds, any item for overhead you can add. And then don't forget always to adjust for location and time. So this is an example that will be posted in the course account. Last thing I would wrap up with is, now let's see how one item is estimated using the assembly based approach and the work based approach. So let's say this is the exterior walls assembly, and RS means it's provided here the cost per square foot. So every square foot of this wall, if it is cement stucco using 7/8 of a plywood sheathing, and the wall is a stud wall wood 2x4, and they are placed as 16-inch on center, the material will cost $3.23 per square foot of the wall. The installation will be expensive, $10.45 per square foot per wall. So in total will be $13.68 per square foot of the wall. That simple. That's simple. And you know, it's simple because you don't have the design information complete with you. Now, if you want to do detailed cost estimates, so now you are a contractor building this one, you will not be sufficiently happy with the assembly. You want to have actually a very accurate estimate, so you can sub it out. You know how much, as much as you can accurately, it will be done for, and those subbing the work for you. So we'll see now the different trades working for you. They can do more a detailed estimate and commit to a cost for this item. So this assembly, the exterior wall, will include 3 divisions: wood, thermal, and protection and finishes. So the first one here, you have to do the stud wall. So kind of walking through what type of work items involved in this assembly. So you will build the stud wall, and it's this line item in division 6, which is the wood section. And then you will do the sheathing plywood. So we'll put the panels outside the plywood, and it's in division 6 also. And then you will do the blanket insulation. So you will insulate the inside of the wall here, different type of insulation. So I'm just giving an example here. All of these line items are an example of what could be have done in one way of doing this wall. So it depends on the detailed design documents that you would have to do this. Otherwise, just use the assembly cost estimate. And then the next would be the weather barrier. So the house wrap sheets to insulate against moisture. And the last thing here is stucco. So plaster and the mesh, the stucco mesh here that we have. So in this line item, it actually combines both work items together in one line item, which can happen in some cases. In some line items, they can actually combine different one or more work items in the same line item or the same unit cost. So you can see how extensive the effort to develop work-based estimates versus an assembly-based estimate that's just a square foot or linear foot type of rate. So that's the end of this lesson and this video. We'll learn about work-based cost estimating, when to use it, and we've seen an example of how RS means building cost data can be used to develop work-based estimates. As I said before in the previous video, for assembly-based cost estimating, you will learn estimating by actually doing it. So that's the same disclaimer I said before. You're not done and you're not an estimator now. You have to actually do it. But what you have learned, it will be kind of the you start to know the terminology, know what data are available, and it's up to you to apply it, try it out, be comfortable with making assumptions, be organized in your calculations for estimating, and over time, you will learn and become an experienced estimator. All right, thank you, and I will see you in future lessons.